Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I really am delighted to be sitting here with John Paul Mason so that we can talk about Celtic for the next hour. JP, how have you been? You've been a busy boy.
I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit gubbed, but good to sit down actually for a bit and just not have to worry about anything else apart from this for an hour. So.
Absolutely, and that's what it does. It does that for me, does that for the people tuning in, and hopefully we will also be doing that on Sunday, and it's going to be a twofold Sunday for the League Cup final, which is going to be our focus today once we get over the Champions League thoughts of JP Mason. Sunday is obviously a League Cup final. It's a Glasgow derby, and Celtic will be lining up, I think, fully confident, but we'll be talking about how they line up. We'll be streaming the game live as normal on our channels, but we'll also be doing a kind of indoor fan zone at Barazat Design. Big screen, free pies, drink, food, live music, and a wee bit of Celtic chat before the game, half-time, and at full-time as well. Thanks, everybody, for coming out at the last Champions League game, which we'll be discussing today, and we'll be doing it all again on Sunday. It already got the attention of Sky Sports. They're going to come down to talk to the Celtic fans before we kick off the proceedings on Sunday. So looking forward to that one. We'll cover the Champions League and where we are, JB, because like everybody else, obviously I get the kind of reaction on here first and foremost, and then have a look at the social media situation. I then look at the Celtic News Now, who give you like a taster of what the blogs are writing, etc. And it seems a wee bit mixed. It seems a little bit mixed with regards to the outcome of the game. I get why people are disappointed. It looked as though we were capable of winning the game. But over the piece, I'm pretty happy. I am pretty happy where Celtic are sitting at the moment. JP, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've not maybe ingested as much reaction as I normally would, given I've been busy the last few days. But yeah, I have noticed that the kind of sort of not divide, that's the wrong thing to say, the mild disagreement amongst supporters, shall we say, about the nature of the result. I managed to see the game. I was down in Leeds and I set myself a 2.5 hour target to get all the merch sorted for the band before the kick-off. So I managed to do it with about 5 minutes to spare. So Nathan at the Brudenell would very kindly, he's a mad Leeds United fan. He was actually away to the game. They played Middlesbrough 1-3-1, big game for them. Mm-hmm. So he set up the Celtic game on a screen for me in the Brudenell Social Club, which is an amazing venue. If you've never been to a gig there and you see a band playing there that you want to go and see, dingy the gig in your hometown and go and travel to Leeds to there, because it's such a great venue.
Is there a comparison? Is there a Scottish comparison, would you say, in terms of the venue?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's an old social club that Nathan inherited from his parents, and he's built it into what it is. And he built an extra room on a spare bit of the car park, so he now has 2 rooms in a social club that can have 400 people in each of it. And Gun, Scottish band Gun, were in the other room.
Celtic fans.
Yeah. I think they must have been watching it on their bus, because they weren't in the bar bit watching it when I was. But a couple other Celtic fans dotting about. Just folk from Leeds whose dads were Scottish or Irish. They came over and sat sort of next to me watching it, because the Liverpool game was on at the same time. So there's quite a lot of, most of the rest of the screens were showing the Liverpool game.
Right.
But yeah, we had a wee corner watching Celtic. So
wherever you are, JP, wherever you are, you find a way, don't you?
Well, aye. I mean, it was, and I also was relieved then to find out that the doors to the gig weren't until 7:30, which gave me till 7:30 to watch the rest of it, because I thought I was going to have to watch most of the second half on my phone. But I got to watch it.
Didn't I see you at a Mogwai gig one night, and you were doing the merchandise, and you were also watching a Celtic game on your phone? I'm sure that was the case a few years ago. It was in Edinburgh, wasn't it?
It was the Usher Hall. Yeah, Usher Hall. I can't remember who we were playing. It must have been a league game. It was late November, I think. But I obviously wanted to watch the game, so I got to sit down and watch it with a non-alcoholic pint. You got to keep your wits about you when you're doing merch. I'm
going to ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt, JP. I have never had a non-alcoholic pint. Now, I know Kev Graham sometimes does it when he's out and about, and it's more or less like he's not the guy standing there with tons of iron brew on it, so he'll have a non-alcoholic beer. Does it taste the same? Does it have a placebo effect?
Nah, it definitely doesn't. I mean, I got a Thatcher's 0% cider, which essentially was just apple juice. I mean, it's the fizzy apple juice. So it was good. It was just something to sit and have while I was watching the game and maybe make me feel like I was, out in a Celtic pub or whatever. But I mean, I kind of like. I think few people have said about the way the stadium was a bit weird. In fact, the fact that they had like what was the whole one side of it was completely closed, right?
I know. It was like some of these stadiums you go to in Scotland, East Fife. I think Falkirk Stadium's got one side missing as well, isn't it? And it gives it a kind of soulless vibe, JP. It's like I remember when I played football back in the day, and in the Scottish Cup, you could be drawn against a jail team. I don't know if you ever had this yourself. What's the name of the place Stirlingshire way? Is it Pullman? Pullman, yeah.
That's the Falkirk, yeah.
So we drew them in the Scottish Cup. So you actually, for obvious reasons, all their games are at home. So we went to the prison to play them. And probably a bit rattled for the whole experience of going into a prison to play football, and then the guards, and you're in this football arena, and there's obviously nothing there. There's nobody watching it, kind of thing. And even at that level, it's soulless. I can't imagine what it would be like. But, I mean, obviously, they've got a big ultra movement. I've seen a lot of Celtic fans who were mixing with their ultras in the boozers after the game and all that, which was nice. Big shout out to everybody who made the trip as well, JP, because in advance of the game, a lot of people were saying you've got to watch yourself. It's going to be a dodgy one, not safe in certain areas, etc. I've not had any bad reports from Celtic fans in that respect.
No, I know some people that were there, and I certainly didn't see or hear anything from their posts on social media. It seemed to be quite friendly, jovial, whatever. But might not have been the same if we'd won. But no, I think I don't think we played well. There's no question we didn't play the same swashbuckling football that we've played in the last few months. That's got us big results. Obviously, the Leipzig game being one of them. And it is frustrating when you're there or thereabouts at this point in the Champions League, and it's heady territory for us because we don't have any experience of this format of the competition.
Yeah,
first time it's been like this, and obviously you do, I suppose, get greedy when you're like, it's within touching distance. But I mean, all the people that were grumbling about the other night, if we beat Young Boys Bern at home and qualify, will they still be grumbling? I mean, obviously there'll be a case to answer if we don't do that at home, because I mean they're getting scudded left, right, and centre. I mean, they got hammered the other night, didn't they? Again,
Leverkusen.
Yeah, which obviously is to be expected going there. But I mean, they've got 0 points. Their goal difference is really poor, so you would expect us to step up and do the business there. But a point away from home, and one of the stats that was read out was is it the best European run a manager's had since Davy Hay in '82? Is it something like that? Did you hear that? Apparently, it's the best string of results in the top European competition for a Celtic manager since Davy Hay.
That is an interesting stat. I think if it's Davy Hay, you're probably talking 83 to 87.
Okay.
So that is a very, very interesting stat. I mean, the way I'm looking at it, JP, is it was difficult to argue last season that we were making progress. It was difficult to argue the toss because we go away to Atletico Madrid and get hammered, we don't qualify, and you've got that final away game where we've got sending offs and all that. But I've even heard Brendan Rodgers saying it this season, that it was certain moments and the margins weren't as big as they would appear when you look at the league table from last season's Champions League campaign. So I think he's gone in having learned quite a lot about the team last season. He's gone in this time round, and I got the sense, right, and I don't even know if this exists in football. I know that the famous one was Dukla Prague away. Jock Stein, who had a team who attack, and the one occasion where he went and defended and played Stevie Chalmers up top on his own was Dukla Prague away. All I Want for Christmas and all that stuff. But it got us through to the European Cup final. So it was a really pragmatic approach. And someone made the point yesterday in the comments after the live show that after the Dortmund game where they hammered us, we were going on about pragmatism and how you've got to be so much more pragmatic away from home in Europe. Isn't that what we've done against Atalanta? Isn't that what we've done against Dynamo Zagreb? Well, it is. The problem I've got against Zagreb, they're, I don't think, anywhere near as good as Atalanta are. And when I was watching it, I just felt they were there for the taking. But there seemed to be a moment where we would put the brakes on a wee bit. You know, I did get that sense. We would put the brakes on a little bit and we played within ourselves. But then again, you can turn that around as a positive and say, listen, we weren't at our best against Bruges. We weren't at our best against Zagreb. Yet we avoided defeat, which surely had to be the main objective of those two games. You go into that young boys game, and I don't even think it's bold to say we're going to win that game. We're going to win it at home. You know, and it's no disrespect to young boys. It's more of a respectful notion towards the Celtic team, towards Brendan Rodgers, to say we're capable of winning that and we will win it. I was looking at the very, very good percentage kind of rating, talking about points on football rankings who have an X page, and they came out. So we've got 9 at the moment. If we didn't win another point, which I don't see happening personally, maybe that's overconfidence, but I don't see that happening. We have a 38% chance of qualifying for a playoff if we don't win another point. 10 points. So if we get 1 point from the next 2 games, 83%. So that absolutely throws a massive, massive cat amongst the pigeons. If you get 11 points, 99%. If we manage to get a win, JP, between the young boys game and Villa, right? 12 points, 100% that you're going to qualify. So we know what's riding on this game at young boys, right? At home. The only frustration for me is we're having to wait until the end of January for these games now.
Well, you could say that, but at the same time, I'm sure the players will be grateful that there's a bit of a break. And I think maybe coming back refreshed, obviously, albeit without a winter break, but coming back with a bit of kind of, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like if you get too many like big things all at the same time, then it maybe demeans one of them a little. You know, it's like getting everything you want at the same time. You know, have a bit of time to sort of put it in the distance and have it to aim towards to. And then obviously we've got domestic matters to concentrate on in the interim. And yeah, it's good to have something. You don't want all the Champions League games at once and all crammed in. It's good to have something in January to look forward to because it's usually a pretty bleak month. So having those 2 games in January psychologically as well for the players, it means that Europe's not over before Christmas as it's been so many times in the past. Same for the supporters. So, and it has been quite relentless of late, and it will continue to be relentless for the rest of this month and into January in terms of the volume of games that we're playing, because it just seems like it doesn't stop. So, as much as it's frustrating the other night because obviously when you've seen what a team can do, there's that immediate kind of, oh, why can't you do it every time, every week, every game? Like, why is Nicholas Kuhn not assisting 2 and scoring 1 at the other night? You know, why is Ida not getting his goal? Why is Kyogo not doing what he did at the weekend against Hibs? All those things are like then labelled at the team when there's a stalemate and it's 0-0. But ultimately, if again, we all we want to see is steady progress, and there's none of the people that moaned and bumped their gums online or in person or in pubs the other night could possibly evaluate this at the end of this campaign. And by the way, there's obviously been many negative comments about Celtic in Europe on our shows that we've done, and some people saying I'm reserving judgment till the end of the campaign. So if you wait to the end of the campaign and say we've qualified, can you possibly say that's not progress? No. It's incremental, isn't it? We're not going to just, Rome wasn't built in a day. We're not just going to go straight away and become like a top 8 side in the Champions League just because we're close to it. I think that's the other thing as well. It's like this new setup's so sort of tantalising that you're in and amongst it, and for the first time ever, we're actually sort of holding our own against.
Absolutely. Look at the team above and below us, Real Madrid and Man City.
And the Atalanta result looks better and better through the passing of time with every result that they gain, either domestically or in Europe as well. I know they got beat. They got beat last night or the night before off the Dortmund. No, it wasn't Dortmund. Somebody beat them at home. Real Madrid. Real Madrid beat Atalanta 3-2, I think. Unless my memory's playing tricks on me.
You're right. No, you're right. It was in Italy, and Real Madrid won 3-2. Yeah.
But I mean, if that's your only loss, then it's to Real Madrid, and they've ran them close. It's not exactly a something to be ashamed of, is it? So, I mean, as a Celtic supporter of 30 odd years going to the games, I was a bit disillusioned with the Champions League, to the point that it was just like, what's the point? We've not got the artillery needed to fight on those fronts, in terms of, like, if you're getting a Barcelona and a Bayern Munich and a PSG, and it's just like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
But this format allows us to actually dream, and it's just a case of people dream big, don't they? And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think it should be then labelled at the team that we're suddenly terrible because we didn't beat Zagreb. And obviously Hatate's coming for criticism, I see quite a lot, based on his performance. Yes, he wasn't good, but were the whole team good? No. So, like, I don't think it's... Sometimes the team just doesn't click on a night like that.
Yeah. And
it's unfortunate and it's frustrating, but it's not a case of, oh, well, scorched earth, everything's rubbish, we're terrible, we should be fearful going into Sunday because we've drawn 0-0 against Zagreb. I mean,
absolutely not. JP, there's so much to take from the game. I mean, it was a heavy pitch. I had to, and this is the thing, right? So anything I say about the game, I've just copied what Jackie McNamara said, because he was sitting next to us at Bad that night watching it. And it's an education. I've done that twice in my life with an ex-footballer. And it's an education when you hear them talking through a football game, because what happens is you often see things as the result of X, Y, and Z happening. But whilst X, Y, and Z is happening, somebody like Jackie looks at it and tells you, look, this is all wrong, which is going to result in that. Then it happens. Because he's a coach, and he knows in terms of the positional play and the gaps and all the rest of it. So I was, as I say, it was absolutely brilliant for me to sit there and listen to that. But when I was looking at the game, I thought to myself, we played all right. We weren't absolutely rotten. There was some good performers in the team as well. I think the two centre-halves played really well. I think until Johnson went off, he was his usual self. I've got concerns about left-back, which I spoke about yesterday. Bernardo, excellent. McGregor, and I had to watch the game again. So I've watched the game twice. I thought McGregor was excellent as well, actually, but in a kind of low-key manner, which is obviously something he does regularly. The two players that I was disappointed with, but not on a kind of individual level, it was more to do with the way that our opponents defended, were the wingers, because they're the two guys that have created so much for us this season, particularly Kuhn. And we know what Maida can do, but they were nullified to a degree. Kuhn had a very good first 30 minutes. If you watch the game back, he did get free of his marker. His marker was a right back playing left back, and he played really well. We gave him loads of kudos yesterday, the left back. But Kuhn and Maida, if they two guys are firing, or if they get away, JP, or if one of their crosses just meets its target, we're having a different conversation. And this is the margins. So we have made massive strides, massive progress. And part of that is the expectations go up. So there's a group of Celtic fans that I don't have any issue with, by the way, coming away from that really, really gutted, disappointed, and that's fine. And I think Rodgers said that after the game. That's progress, because we've actually given you the belief that we're better than this team. Coming away from home and getting a point normally is okay, but now our kind of expectation levels have gone up. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
But as long as it doesn't become an absolute witch hunt on players like that.
Hatate's one of my favourite players in this Celtic squad. I love, his ability to be able to turn a game at any level. At one point, JP, I thought his ceiling was higher than Matt O'Reilly's at one point. Then last season happened, and that completely changed my view on it. But Hatate's got an incredible ability, an incredible natural talent for football. He wasn't good. He lost the ball far too often. I mean, Greg Taylor will get a hard time for losing the ball. Greg Taylor lost the ball twice in, I think, 12 minutes in dangerous areas. ended up getting booked as a result of one of them. Hatate lost the ball just as often as Taylor. Maybe Alan Morrison will correct me on that tomorrow, but certainly from my view, I was watching it yesterday and kind of analysing it a wee bit more. They weren't holding the ball anywhere near enough. They weren't tidy enough with the ball. Very, very slack in possession. And at this level, if you're playing in Atalanta or Borussia Dortmund, they will absolutely punish you big time. So there's a few wee concerns in there. But again, next season, or even if we do get through, and I hope we do, to the next stages of this campaign, JP, we can improve even there. You view that almost as the next section of this campaign if we get to the playoff, right? Because we can buy players in January. We were looking at that yesterday. You can buy, there's a window where you buy a player and you can register 3 new players in your Champions League squad. So you can mix that up a little bit. You're looking at our Champions League squad and you're looking at players like Nawrocki, who's in it. Are we going to use him? Palma, I know he was on the bench the other night, JP, but we're probably not going to use these guys. So if we bring in another 3 of quality, then you go into that playoff and it gives you another extra, bit of momentum and another, it's tightening that margin again. And anything's possible. And then I'm not even thinking about who we might get when we're in there. But yeah, the Champions League is very interesting for me to see how the expectations have gone through the roof. And it's great on the one hand. But on the other hand, like you say, no witch hunt whatsoever. Going into the weekend's game, again, the evidence will show we're a better side. That's the evidence, right? All you have to do is look at the squad, you look at the form, what we've done this season. Going into that game, the way that Brendan Rodgers can somehow get a result at times. I mean, the game last season where we couldn't, field a team at the back, Liam Scales and Lagerbielke get thrown together, we win the game. He can do these things, JP. So in terms of going into that game, yes, it should be a given, but it never is. A cup final, a one-off tournament, anything's possible. This is a team that we're playing who are obviously in action tonight. I'm hoping Ange gives them a night to forget this evening, another night to forget. But going into the game at the weekend, we'll run through the team and we'll talk about some of the dilemmas that might be faced. But how are you feeling about the League Cup final? First and foremost, have you got a ticket or are you coming down to our fan zone down at Barazat Design?
I'm feeling a lot better about it now that I do have a ticket. Yeah, I was really happy to open my emails and I was actually opening my emails looking for a receipt for something and it just popped up. You have an email from Celtic and then it said you're eligible for the Premier Sports League Cup final, and immediately went in, logged in and all the rest of it, and the amount of seats that they'd released was minimal, so I felt quite fortunate that I'm guessing it was the third ballot, that there was just maybe like a few hundred seats released and my name got pulled out of the hat, which was a relief because I hate not being at the games, especially a final. I mean, if it was against anybody, I would want to go. I go to as many games as I can. So to be relegated to not being able to go to the game when I'm on the home cup ticket scheme, and I've been to the majority. Lucky to have been at the majority of finals that we've played in the last 20 years. I was going to say 10 years, but it's a lot more than that now. So yeah, I obviously always go into these games with an air of caution, regardless of how things were looking maybe 3-4 weeks ago. Everyone's thinking, they're thinking, we're going to get absolutely annihilated in this game. But it's funny how they've gone from sort of Clermont out to an away win in Europe, a home win against Kilmarnock where they took 6 off them, which, I mean, can happen. I don't think Kilmarnock are up to much. And then an away win at Ross County, which they couldn't do last season. So I get that that's progress for them. But the idea that they were going to get rolled over by us was quite prevalent amongst their support and our support. I never really subscribed to that as an idea. Obviously, you're confident going in. How could you not be? But it's like you say, it's a cup final. Anything can happen. I mean, even the semi-final under Dyler, when I was at that game, nobody would have thought we would have lost that game. Not in a million years. but we did because it went to penalties and there was jeopardy there. So, and even last season's Scottish Cup final, again, people would have thought we would have absolutely rolled them over, but it took a last-minute goal from Ida to seal it. The League Cup final in 2019 was fraught. That was a absolute roller coaster of a game. Again, at a time that they were probably closer to us in terms of their squad and their team and everything else, but we still had a far better side, you would think, on paper.
Are they still moaning about that one?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. I remember at the end of that game getting my phone out and actually timing the injury time, because it was just like, every second, every ball getting booted out the park or up the park was just like, it was a roar, because it was that game. I remember before it, actually, this is the klaxon. Get ready with the Kieran Tierney klaxon, everybody. I remember Tierney coming right round. It's almost like he'd done a lap of honour. He'd done a lap, and he was talking to the fans down the front, because he never made it. There was a rumour that he might have made the game, and he wasn't fit. And he was down the front talking to the fans. And I remember also thinking to myself, El Yunusi should never have played, because he looked as though he was running in quicksand in the first half. He just wasn't fit, JP, and then the best player on the park for me, the only outball, and I've never watched the game back, strangely enough, for a cup final victory, but the only outball from memory was Frimpong. He ended up getting sent off. Remember?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I was going to say it does help if you score the penalty that you're given in a game like that in a cup final. So if you're missing a penalty in a cup final, then I don't really know what you've got to moan about.
That's true.
But yeah, that was fraught. So I'm just hoping that the players find the levels that they're capable of, and that we've seen them, the sort of form they've produced this season. Like, if they do that, then they'll be a very difficult team to live with. And obviously we know that Rodgers has got the experience of many finals. His experience in England as well will count for a lot, and has probably counted for a lot in what he's done since he came back. The way that he had to manoeuvre competitions with a club like Leicester. They're not one of the big dogs really in England, so I've learned a lot from that, and I can't be anything but confident with a manager like Brendan Rodgers in charge. I just think that he's built for these occasions and relishes the challenge. People will say, "Oh well, of course you've got," even their manager, or the financial advantage in the next two games is out of our league, but we'll enjoy that challenge. So that obviously gets waved about, that we've spent more money or whatever. But then I was quite pleased that James McFadden completely shot that down within seconds of hearing him say it on Sunday, when he said, "Well, what about today? Which your financial advantage over Ross County is absurd. So don't be trotting out the excuses before the games have happened."
Yeah.
So, like I said, cup final comes with the pressure of being at a cup final, and it's about who handles that better on the day. And you wouldn't bet against us handling it better, but there's obviously got to be an element of caution based on their slight upturn in form. Suddenly they've got the new the new Ronaldo or the new whoever in Hamza Igaman. I saw some patter this morning saying, "Oh, I know we bum up our players a lot, but even the Celtic fans are saying this guy's good." So you know how sometimes, well, not sometimes, very often, that they will ham up players to be
the values. It's just like, come on. I mean, often I've seen that, JP, normally on the socials, to be honest. And this is the thing. You build yourself up for a potential fall. I'm looking at the fact Brendan Rodgers has never lost at Hampden Park. Now, that in itself is an incredible record, right? And it's a hard record to break. But there is that flip side of a team who, as you say, that their form has picked up. They've got John Beaton refereeing the game. That in Scottish football, it's always a consideration. JP, and we talk about it. It's not about tinfoil hat stuff. It's like,
especially if you've seen his yearbook.
Yeah, his yearbook. I wonder what I said in mine. I've still got that somewhere kicking about. But it was not like John Beaton's, put it that way. I love how Smell the Glove calls the League Cup the 7-1 Cup. Yes, let's forget about sponsors for a minute and call it the 7-1 Cup. There's so much important aspects of this cup for me, JP, because there's players in the Celtic side who have never won a trophy for Celtic. And then I think that, this winning mentality can be instilled by a manager. It can be instilled by a culture. But actually winning, for me, is the final. That's the final part of having a winning mentality. Galvanizes the team. And it can galvanize them through the rest of the season. We spoke about the Wim Jansen campaign and also Angie's first season. I think the League Cup, a lot of people don't give it the kind of credit it deserves. It's probably the third, in terms of ranking, the third domestic trophy and all that. But it's important in other ways. And I think it's important for this season as well, because momentum is huge. I keep using that word. It's becoming almost a go-to word. But momentum is massive in football in terms of form, confidence, and this winning mentality that I'm talking about. So going out on Sunday, absolutely huge. Somebody said to me about, what would you take? Would you take a win against Zagreb, a win against Rangers? Win against Rangers all day long. Because you've got 2 games to make up anything that happens against Zagreb. Whereas this is a one-off. You go out there, anything is possible. And I'm really keen to hear everybody's thoughts on that before JP and I talk about the actual start 11 and our reasons behind it. Alan Robertson, great to see you as always. Bernardo, Kalmac and another for Sunday. That is a great conversation that we're going to start off with. I know it's the middle of the park. But I'm going to start off with Callum McGregor, right? Because the other night there, JP makes 100 appearances for Celtic in the Champions League. There's only 2 players who have made more. It's Jamesy Forrest and it's Scott Brown. I wrote them down, but it was in another journal. So he's number 3 in terms of the all-time Celts at that level. He's breaking records. I think he's 14 games away from hitting 500 as a Celt. One of the most decorated players, and still putting in those performances, those consistent performances, and brilliant. So I want to talk about him because he is the first name on the team sheet. But I was talking over the last few days to people in the know, and they were going on about the fact that there was moments in Callum's career where he almost left the football club, and there was moments in Kieran Tierney, as his second mention of the day, in his career where he almost left the club. And these guys would have just been like Andy Robertson's had they left Celtic. What happens next? Who knows? Andy Robertson went away and got a job in Marks and Spencer's and started kicking a ball for Queen's Park, and only then was spotted by Jackie Mack, Darren Jackson and Simon Donnelly, taken into Dundee United, and everybody knows what happened after that. And I think that feeds into a wider issue. I think it feeds into a wider issue whereby we were talking to John Collins 2 or 3 weeks ago. You're a massive fan of Collins, as am I. And the whole circumstances around the Kieran Tierney thing. And one thing I wasn't aware of is John Collins went a wee bit further back than that. He says, what surprised him and Ronnie Dyler when they finally discovered that we had this young kid called Kieran Tierney, who actually was really decent, was that they had asked the academy several months before, when they were travelling away and there was a couple of injuries here and there, and they wanted to take another left back. Mm-hmm. Now, this was a friendly or a pre-season game, and they asked the academy, listen, we need to take a left back with us, we're a bit short. And they gave them 2 names of left backs who were in the academy system, and neither of them were Kieran Tierney. So Tierney wasn't even in the top 2 in terms of the academy and how they regarded him as a footballer. And it's just, I'm not saying it's exactly the same staff that still exists now, but the people running the academy are the same. So how many of these kids are we missing? And the latest one, of course, this is where this whole point is going, is young Daniel Cummins, who's still banging the goals in. And, the youth version of the Champions League. He's still not been offered a contract, JP. Still not been offered a contract. Now, is it a case, listen, I know Brendan Rodgers has forgotten more than I know about football. Is it just a case of the fact that we don't know how good or bad or indifferent he is, and Brendan does? So just trust his decision-making on this.
I was thinking about this the other day, and just about like the players that have left, and then you ask, I was talking about it with somebody, he's talking about the Rocco Vata thing, Liam Morrison, Daniel Kelly, like these guys, you wonder if they had stayed at Celtic and they were given a chance, or would their development have been better at Celtic? That would they have had a better chance of making it? Or is the fact that they're at these clubs now, I can't really speak for Liam Morrison, but the Daniel Kelly and Rocco Vata transfers at this point in time don't seem to have been the best for them.
No.
In terms of their play, they might be financially better off, but in terms of their actual playing time and career and everything else and their development, don't know really if it has. There's nothing. I've not seen any posts that have pointed to me to be seen like, oh, well, look what Celtic are missing out on here. Now, time might become a different factor in that, and in 2-3 years' time, there might be a case for saying, oh, well, there's a couple that got away or whatever. But you do wonder if, and Brendan Rodgers was quite adamant when he said, if you're good enough, you'll be given a chance.
Yeah.
So, but good enough doesn't just mean being good enough on the pitch. I think it's about everything. It's about attitude. It's about the ability to just keep going and going and going. And whilst people will criticise the likes of Tony Ralston and maybe Stephen Welsh and everything else, but there's something about them that has persuaded managers in the past to give them contracts and keep them around because they have the right attitude. They might not be the best players in the world, but they have the attitude to be called upon if needed. And I guess I don't know if that's the case with a lot of the players that have left us. And again, time will tell. But the Daniel Cummings thing is interesting because, like I said, I think to you before, I know a friend of mine's dad is pals with his dad.
Yeah,
he's a mad Celtic fan of good stock. Doesn't have there's no flashiness about him. He's not boasting about what he's up to in social media and everything else. He's just wants to get his head down and work hard, which is, you would think, from the same ballpark as Callum McGregor, Kieran Tierney, the type of players that, Tierney turning up with a Tesco bag with his boots in it or something like that, and just Callum McGregor not being on social media, all that sort of stuff. It's I don't know. I think there's something different about those guys that have led to them being the success that they are, and they're rare gems amongst a lot of average players, aren't they? I mean, that's why they've come through. That's why they've made the grade.
Yeah, this is the thing. Anybody that ever makes an appearance for Celtic is an exceptional footballer. JP, throughout all the different age levels, and they've been chased by numerous clubs before Celtic get them. And it almost an aside to the fact that we're talking Champions League, and this is the guy that's standing out. And if I went to every single B team game, maybe there's other players who are better than him. I don't know, but if it's just the basic, there's a striker scoring goals at every level that he's playing at. Surely, sometimes you can break through all the data and all the science and just say, give him a chance. Surely, there's nothing wrong with that. And there are occasions where we can do it. Now, we're going to be focusing a wee bit more on this Sunday's game. Daniel Kelly, incidentally, since he went to Millwall, has only played in 3 games of football, totaling 63 minutes. Daniel Kelly may or may not have played more football for Celtic. And Rocco Vata has actually made 12 appearances for Watford at the same level in the Championship. He scored a goal. So, he's maybe working his way into the team. And then Mikey Johnson.
I'm not writing those guys off, by the way. Not by any means, but it's more about comparing what their development is like there as to how it would have been at Celtic, and if they would have got any closer to the Celtic first team by signing a 2-year deal or something and sticking around.
Well, that was going to be the third striker, according to Brendan Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have, if that was the case, he would have been in the Champions League squad. So, yeah, you're right. And the other one, of course, is Mikey Johnson. Mikey played really, really well whilst on loan at West Brom. He's now down there. He's played a dozen games. In fact, he's played more than that. He's played 15 games with 1 assist. So, who knows? You just never know, JP. I looked at 13 players the other week there, and not many of them had made their mark since leaving Celtic, and I'm including Karamoko Dembele in that. I know he's playing for QPR. Liam Morrison, I think, is at QPR. Barry Hepburn doesn't have a club. So, we're banging a drum about these youngsters as they're coming through. maybe somebody at Celtic's got it right. Who knows? Who knows until
To go back to
gets the
Callum
time.
McGregor, just before we move on, like I watched that interview with him, and he was asked about the miss against Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Yeah,
I'm wearing that strip actually over my shoulder, and he said that it still kind of haunts him, and
wow.
but he uses it as motivation. And then he was like, I think and hope that I've done enough in a Celtic jersey since then to sort of make up for it type thing. And you're like, well, I just a bit. as they show you the montage of his goals against Rangers as well. But it's interesting that it was just a miss in a game. It can happen to anybody. It's happened to better players than Callum McGregor. It was an away Champions League game, and obviously could have been a big moment. And
it was the stakes, wasn't it? You're right. It was the stakes. Massive moment.
Yeah,
it was nice of the guy to bring it up.
who
was doing the interview?
I'm not sure, but I'm sure he didn't thank him for it. But like they showed it and everything else, and it was a bad miss. But I mean, it's like if you're focusing in on one miss in a game, when you've done so much outside of that game, I don't think it's necessarily that fair. And although there will be some bitter, disgruntled Celtic fans somewhere that will be like, nah, missed that chance in Mönchengladbach and Düsseldorf. That's it for me. Nah,
Imposter.
Never a Celtic captain.
I know. But the reason we're bringing up Cummins, right, it's not a fixation, and we've not just moved that fixation from Vata to Cummins, is the fact that, you've got a player like Callum McGregor and also James A. Forrest, who's not making as many appearances, who are at that kind of higher level of Champions League games played, JP, going into the 500 club, most decorated Celts are up there in the top 3-4 players and stuff like that. And it's part of our traditions to have that core group of Celts who have come through the system. And I would like, as a Celtic supporter, for that tradition to continue. That's what I'm saying. So if those players aren't good enough that we've mentioned, why are we not getting players who are good enough? And that would be the big question I would ask, because we need that tradition to continue. We need a core group of players who know the inner workings of this football club, the expectations of the supporters, the fabric of the history of this football club, and what it means to so many. I think we need that.
Well, maybe something that the progress of Paul Tisdale's work's been a little bit quiet since he joined. Not that I'm expecting weekly updates on what he's doing or anything like that, but possibly there might be tweaks that are introduced early on in the process of the development of a player that could allow in 4, 5, 6 years time that to be different. I mean, I'm completely and utterly speculating, but surely if you've got someone in charge of that side of things, which Brendan Rodgers identified as being required by the club, then you would hope that it's going to affect a lot of different aspects of the club, whether it's first team, academy, anything really. You want to see progress, and progress would be in 4 or 5 years' time if there was 2 or 3 or 4 Scottish players who have come through the ranks and are introduced into the first team and are of the quality that will be able to hold down a place in that team, rather than just sort of come in, make a brief cameo and then disappear again into the ether. Yeah,
playing for some other club in Scottish football who probably doesn't have an academy because they'll sign up all the Celtic players that get freed every season. The Urban Culture, welcome back to the stream. If Bruges or Brugge and Zagreb are so bad, then how come they have so many points? Who exactly are the good teams? Very open with regards to the new system and the new setup in the Champions League, isn't it? Paulo must start, says Joe Hamilton. I agree with you, Joe. I think Bernardo was one of the best players in the park the other night, JP. Let me know if you agree with that. And also, who is the third midfielder for you? Because we know that McEwen is obviously cup tied. Callum McGregor starts, no question. But who's the other 2 midfield players? I'm going to go for Bernardo, and I'm going to stick with Hatate, even though I don't think he played well the other night. What's your take on it, JP?
Well, the best opportunity you can give somebody when they've had a bad time or a bad night is to go again. And we know the erratic nature of Rio Hatate, so wouldn't it just be like him to get a start on Sunday and shut a lot of people up. I would certainly enjoy that if that was the case. By the way, you said that you thought Hatate had a higher ceiling than Mattarelli. I've never thought that. I've never.
No,
thought...
you said it after his debut, JP.
I know.
You said it on here after his debut.
An absolute raker against Hearts and Greg Gordon, which was immensely enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. I think that was the last time I was at Tynecastle, to be honest, before they slashed their allocation. That's absolute farce, man. I know, it just is like...
They are bitter, mate.
And Rodgers called out as well. It was amazing that he brought that up. Mm-hmm. And he knows exactly when to just drop a wee miniature grenade into a press conference. It's just like, we must be the richest league in the world up here, since we've got so many empty seats at the grounds. And then he just kind of like let that percolate and then moved on. And I was like, yes, well done.
He just throws it out there, eh? Yeah, it's like Pepe Le Pew. It just kind of lingers for a while.
Aye, but Hatate is always sort of... He's never convinced me that he's the guy that's going to go for 25 million to an English Premier League club. I know that he's threatened that kind of form, and if you probably if you made a highlights reel of Rio Hatate, you could probably make him look very appealing. But we've signed players in the past that we've seen amazing highlights reels, and then they come and you're like, where's that guy that we saw on YouTube? Because he's not here. So
we've seen that a few times, haven't we?
That's why I hardly pay any attention to those things anymore, because they immediately make you go, oh, what? This guy's going to be dynamite, and then you find that he's on loan in 6 months' time to somebody else, and then we let him go for half of what we paid, or that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm not saying Hatate's not a good player, but I don't think he's someone that you can absolutely hang your hat on every game to be like, right, he's going to give us a minimum 7, because there's games...
You never know what he's going to get. Sometimes he gives you a 4 in the first half and a 10 in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would... I think it would be a lot of pressure on Engels. I know that he deserves the pressure given the money that he'll be earning.
Big pressure. Big pressure.
Aye, big pressure. Oh yeah, well, we dealt with that all right. But and people say, oh, we paid £11 million for him. That's not his fault. But he will be getting, rewarded handsomely with his wage packet. But I wouldn't think that the game on Sunday would maybe be the right place for him to start. I just think Hatate would probably be a better bet for me.
I agree with that. And what about Bernardo? Because I really did feel, and watching it back a second time, confirmed it for me. I thought he was the best midfielder on the park the other night. I
don't know how you couldn't start him. He's looking more and more mature as a player every time you see him play. Like I said about the game against Aberdeen, the way he controlled the ball in those conditions just was really, really impressive. And he's definitely got an appetite and clearly wants to do well at Celtic. He's probably eyeing a move down the line. Everybody will be, really, if you think about it. I mean, there's no way that you're going to be thinking, right, this is where I'm going to play the rest of my career. I very much doubt that.
Right, there's another thing then, jumping back to our previous conversation. Is that only likely to happen with a player you brought through?
I just think it depends on life and circumstances, doesn't it? I mean, is Austin Trusty going to be here for the next 5 years because he's...
But everybody will buy. You think at some point we're going to have to say farewell to this player. They're going to leave. Whereas you look at Forrest and McGregor, Ralston, and you think they'll probably finish their career here.
I know, but they're definitely... I'm pretty certain that there was a moment where Callum McGregor was, like you said earlier, was on the verge of leaving.
Yeah.
So, and James Forrest could have left as well. I think there was interest in him, and it might have been the arrival of Brendan Rodgers the first time around that maybe changed that. Would that be right in saying that, or was
Absolutely. I think it was Spurs. Spurs had a Scottish scout actually called Mike Jackson, who played with Celtic back in the 1950s. Came through the ranks with Billy McNeil, and he was seen as something. I've met Mike a few times. He was one of Billy McNeil's, closest friends, and the chairman at the time, Robert Kelly, thought that he was a troublemaker. Him and Bertie Auld thought they were troublemakers, and got rid of the both of them. Obviously, Bertie went to Birmingham and then came back, but Mike Jackson was a goal scorer, and he was doing a bit of scouting for Harry Redknapp, I think it was at the time, and Scott Brown and Jamesy Forrest were the two guys that he was watching, and he told Redknapp they would both easily transition to the English league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it's just about sliding doors moments and all the rest of it, isn't it? It's just about manager might not fancy you, might not fancy the manager. You think in that moment, how much game time am I going to get in the next couple of years? That could have affected their decision to leave. But I think with Brendan Rodgers in charge and playing at Champions League football, and a lot of these players now have played more games in the Champions League this season than they ever have, ever. So because of the nature of the competition. So I can't see how it wouldn't be an attractive place. I get that you've got the grind of domestic games and going away on a Tuesday night to somewhere in the freezing rain like Aberdeen on a Wednesday night. That was an unforgiving environment to play football for sure. But you would like to think that if we're offsetting that with progressing, it's not actually progressing in the Champions. Well, yeah, potentially progressing in the Champions League to the next round, but more a case of incremental progression, i.e., look at the points on the board versus last season versus the season before. And if Brendan Rodgers can extend this unbeaten run into the next game, what does that make him? Does that take him back to Steen? Potentially, I don't know.
Well, I think that
when or 83 for Davy Hay, then
did
Davy Hay continue that run with 5 unbeaten games in the European Cup, or is it actually since Steen? Because if you're talking since Steen, then that's levels, isn't it?
It will be because if Davy Hay, and I never saw that actually, that stats is a really interesting one. If he's the guy, if he's the benchmark in kind of recent times, then obviously he's exceeding the kind of levels that O'Neill got to in that type of run. So you would be going back. I mean, Billy McNeil had some decent runs as the manager of Celtic. Got us to the quarterfinals 1980 against Real Madrid. And a lot of the supporters and the players actually who were involved in the return game at the Bernabeu are still, looking back on that and thinking that the referee probably has a nice wee villa somewhere on the back of that particular result. But yeah, I'm going to check that myself because I find that really, really interesting. But in terms of players coming and going, I'm pretty sure in January there'll be a few others as well. Just looking there at Maurice Jens, I was wondering, he popped into my mind when you were talking about players who have played more Champions League football than they'd ever done before. He played quite a lot of Champions League football for Celtic due to the injury to Cameron Carter-Vickers, and still only 25. He can play centre-back or right-back, and he is now loaned out from Wolfsburg, who bought him for €8 million. He's loaned out to Mainz. So that's where he's playing his football in Germany at the moment. He's a player that I thought was excellent, somebody that we weren't prepared to pay the fee for, unfortunately. We're talking about the selection dilemmas, if it is such a thing. Left back, is it a dilemma for you against Rangers? Because I think that Greg Taylor generally does pretty well against them.
Yeah, it's interesting because did Bailly get on the other night? He didn't get on.
No, he did not.
I that is the biggest question mark. I don't know what's, because people will point to Greg Taylor, and there's obviously people that say that he's not been good enough the entire time he's been at Celtic, which I think is a nonsense, because his trophy cabinet would point to a different answer to that, because you don't win all those medals, you don't play as many games, you don't contribute as much as he's done in the last 4 years if you're not good. I mean,
he's outstanding under Ange. This is the big thing, right? We can't forget the form under Ange, and I think because of the way Ange played, Johnston's spoken about it. Johnston prefers the way Brendan Rodgers is using his fullbacks, more of a traditional overlapping fullback, whereas Greg Taylor was suited to that inverted fullback role. He hit his peak under Ange Postecoglou. At that moment, if Greg Taylor was asking for what he's asking for now, I think he might have got it.
Mm-hmm.
But his performances under Brendan Rodgers haven't been at that kind of level for me. And also we had seen the writing was on the wall. We needed cover in there anyway, and that's why Bernabe came to the football club. Just under £4 million from the Argentinian leagues, now playing in Brazil, doing really well, etc., etc. But that is still a dilemma for me because Greg Taylor didn't play well the other night, but like Rio Tati, but he would still be in my starting 11 against Rangers.
I agree, and I agree based on the vulnerabilities I've seen I've seen him doing good stuff. I've seen him go forward. He's pretty decent with his distribution. And he's clever, but he also has the ability to get robbed. And I don't know if, like Engels, I don't know if Sunday's the occasion for him.
He seems to get a booking, and I don't know if it's a rashness about his play at the moment, JP, or still adapting to the Scottish game and the officialdom of the Scottish game. But he seems to have a booking in him, and I know that Greg Taylor got booked pretty early doors the other night. Slight concern about AJ. Looking forward to seeing Brendan Rodgers.
What is the concern about AJ? What happened?
Well, after the game, Rodgers spoke about the fact that it was nothing serious. He just felt it was a muscular thing, and it was, remember, the coming together when the two Zagreb players were booked as a result of it. I think it was that moment, and he was kind of moving about gingerly afterwards. So he was taken off at half time. For me, Tony Ralston again. Domestically, you don't notice it as much, but he comes on the other night and kind of looked out of his depth. I don't know, is that unfair? And this is a player that I've got a lot of time for, JP. I felt if we have to progress as a football team and you're going into January, I'm looking at things like, okay, the two wingers weren't great the other night, but the bigger problem I've got there is the backups. So you've got Jamesy Forrest who can come on and you know what Jamesy can do. Beyond that, I don't trust any of them. So then you're thinking, right, see the guys you don't trust at that level, why can't we move them on and bring someone in who we can trust? And it's a wee bit like that now for me at right back and left back. And I'm looking at levels and I'm looking at, right, are we going to progress? Because if so, I would much rather we traded in Welsh, Lagerbielke, turn it into a permanent Novroski and bring in a right centre-half. That's why Maurice Sheds came into my mind. Bring in a right centre-half who can play right back. Because I thought Ralston came on and struggled. I really do think at that level he does struggle. He got a bit of stick and I stood up for him when he was playing for Scotland. People were saying he's not that kind of level of player. And I do feel for him because he's not getting much game time. So when he's thrown into it, sometimes he's a bit rusty as well, JP. But if we want to progress, you've got to be hypercritical about every single position, haven't you?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we can't stand still. There's got to be progression. And Brendan Rodgers is too determined and too focused as a manager to not make difficult decisions if they need to be made in either January or the summer. And I'm sure he will make them. But no, Sunday I would say Taylor, hopefully Johnston, Carter Vickers Trusty, Schmeichel, McGregor, Bernardo, Hatate, Maeda, Kuhn, Kyogo.
Kyogo's got to start. I was going to say this. Ida came on against Rangers twice last season and scored, right? Which means he should be on the bench to do it again. He doesn't start for me. Kyogo's the starter. Kyogo is a man, along with Maeda, who has terrorised Rangers over the last few seasons. He's terrorised them. He loves a cup final goal.
It was a goal Hampden. I was going to say that was the 100%. Because when we played in the semi-final, that's what I was talking about before that game, was that Kyogo loves a goal at Hampden. So he's proven it that he can do it so many times. And I actually had to leave the game early on Saturday and I missed that goal.
Did you?
Yeah, can you believe I missed that goal? It would have been right in front of me as well. It's right in front.
You would need to have watched it back anyway because you wouldn't have believed your eyes. The way that he took that ball.
He takes the touch. I know.
It doesn't look right. It's just too good. It's like a computer generated goal.
Yeah.
A perfect take and the finish as well.
I don't leave games early as a habit, by the way. I had a friend's birthday that I was going to DJ at in Edinburgh, so I had to I had to sort of be sensible about it and leave to go and get the train. So yeah, I looked down and saw that Kyogo had scored, but I had no idea what the goal was like until way later on in the evening, and I saw the clips of it, like they were obviously being shared over and over on online and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, he's got to start. But there's one thing about Sunday that I met Niall Hickey was at the Niall that you met in the Tesco that lives near you. Remember?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Dublin.
Where did I meet him again?
You met him in the Tesco near your house, I think. He stays near you.
That's right. I remember speaking to him. It was outside. You're right. It was outside Tesco. Yes.
He made the point that none of that. There's been very little chat about the so-called record that we would claim if we win the game on Sunday. There's been none of that.
Who's counting?
No, I know, but I mean more about the mainstream media. You know?
This is it. But there was plenty about going for 55, wasn't there?
Will they mention any of it at all if we were to win on Sunday? Will it be? Well,
I reckon you'll get the graphics that the broadcasters put up before the game. I think you'll get that head-to-head, who's won what. Both teams sitting on 118, or the three teams, sitting on 118. And I think they'll make a big deal of it before the game. That'll be a talking point. After the game, JP, I just think it's like Brendan Rodgers is that type of manager. I think he starts every season. He wants to win the treble, and he wants to progress in Europe. And I'm the same. I just want I want that to be your objective. And then if you don't reach it, ask yourself why. What can you do better next time round? And I think he works like that. He's meticulous in that respect.
Oh, it definitely stings him that we didn't get to the final and win it last season.
Yeah, totally.
The fact that we didn't give ourselves even an opportunity to do it because we were out so early, and that was rare territory for us.
It was gutting. It really was gutting. I mean, another thing I'm going to say is, who would you rather have? Let us know in the comment section. John Joe Kenny or Maurice Jens, because I've seen a bizarre rumour that John Joe Kenny was linked to Celtic. Absolutely nuts. That's what happens when you let AI write your blogs for you. But one or two things just to remind you of. At the weekend, you can come along and be part of Acsom's big fan zone down at Barazat Design. It is indoors. Big screen, nice and warm. We put the heaters on and everything. You get a free pie. There's food and drink to be had, and a bit of Celtic chat as well. Live music from Davy McKendrick, and Sky Sports are coming down to talk to Celtic fans if you want to come down for a bit of that action. I think the doors open at 12. Sky will be doing it at 11:30. Let us know if you're coming down. Also, last gig of the year for a Celtic State of Mind is the centenary gig with Liam McGrandles giving us the live music. I've got 45 tickets to shift, so they're going at half price. All you need to do is stick in that promo code Acsom1888 on the link underneath. And then yesterday it was announced I'm working with a promoter, a boxing promoter. We're bringing Michael Conlon to Glasgow, and we're doing a gig up at Bad as well. So the ticket link is underneath the video. That one doesn't happen until February. Big happy birthday, not only to my wee boy, who is 8 today, JP, but to Kundai Benyu, who shares a birthday with Paul Jr. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you to JP Mason for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.